Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Dave Patterson, Graham Noble, and John Clark. And this is the Conservative Five, an online TV news production of Liberty Nation News. The assassination attempt of former President Trump on July 13th has left too many unanswered questions. This week on Capitol Hill, Congress attempted to unravel what went wrong with Trump's assigned security detail. Democrats used the platform to wheedle away at the Second Amendment, but all was not lost. Graham, what happened? And can you address the highlights and even the lowlights if you want to go there?
Sure, Sarah. Obviously, what we're referring to here is the congressional hearing, the Oversight Committee, House Oversight Committee, dragged in Kimberly Cheadle, the current director of the Secret Service, but now outgoing director. And basically, they attempted to get her to tell them something about what happened on that day, anything at all. And she really, of all the congressional hearings I've watched, and you always get this case where the government official who is being grilled will try to worm their way out of answering a lot of questions. Well, if that was if avoiding giving answers was an Olympic sport, Cheadle would have gotten a triple gold medals, I'm sure. She really did give them nothing, and it was even some Democrats. Yes, there were a few Democrats at that hearing who tried to make it about gun violence. And some of them drew the most bizarre connections, and they started going on about how how these states that are allowing permitless carry now for pistols, somehow that's leading to more mass shootings. Bizarre how they came up with that. But anyway, they were going off on a tangent. But there were other Democrats there who were really giving Director Cheadle, I should say Cheadle, her name is not Cheadle, it's Cheadle, a hard time, really giving her a hard time. And they wanted to know, why was there such a delay in getting to the neutralizing the shooter? Why was Trump even allowed to take the stage when they knew beforehand that there was a threat? And basically there were Democrats who were saying, you should resign or be fired. It was a remarkably non-partisan, or if you like, bipartisan hearing for the most part, apart from those wacky Democrats who went on about guns. But here's the thing, Cheadle's answer was that, well, there was no threat. It was just there was a guy who we decided, or who her agents decided, was behaving suspiciously. He had a rangefinder. That's not necessarily highly suspicious that you're walking around with a rangefinder, because some people actually use those. And I believe it was actually a golf rangefinder rather than a rangefinder for a rifle. And some people actually use those when they go to these events, if they're stuck way at the back of the crowd or whatever. But then he's eyeballing this roof. And then, and then he actually gets up onto the roof, which is outrageous because, I've been trained in that very business, that side of the security business. And I know full well, anybody knows in that position that there's no way they should have left that roof unmanned. And they said, well, it was part of our Overwatch. Well, that didn't work out too well, did it? You had a counter sniper team that was supposed to be observing that roof. Clearly they weren't. That kid got up on the roof. He was standing up, then he was lying down. He was shifting around because this was being filmed by some of the rally goers. And so it was appalling. Back to the hearing, as I wrote actually on the pages of libertynation.com, it was obvious that Cheadle was going to have to go. It took me a little bit by surprise that she basically tendered her resignation the next day after that hearing, but it was a dreadful performance. And there is no way that was such a disastrous, it was an absolutely appalling security blunder. And there's no way she should have stayed on. But what is particularly annoying is that it doesn't seem, I don't think anybody else is going to be held accountable for the mistakes that were made that day. We'll see when the reports come back
and the director,
and the FBI, but we'll see what happens.
I even heard that AOC was badgering her pretty good.
AOC actually went there. I'm surprised she went there, and she basically, yeah, she just she tore a few strips off of the director for sure.
Well, what Dems have refused to testify and why? Weren't there a kind of a little bit of a laundry list of people that just said, no, I ain't going to do it?
That's it's difficult to say actually, because I heard this and I even saw something on, someone pointed out to me, someone posted on X that basically Alejandro Mayorkas, the director of the Department of Homeland Security, which is of course the kind of parent department of the Secret Service, and Christopher Wray and somebody else had all basically said no, they're not going to testify. I don't know how true that was, because I believe Wray is actually in front of Congress today answering some questions about that. So I'm not sure, but I do feel that, and in fact, I wrote about this as well. I think the reaction of the Biden administration as a whole to this event, which was a seismic event. I mean, had Trump been killed, this country could well be in absolute chaos right now.
Yes.
And I think the Biden administration's reaction to this attempted assassination is remarkably, unhurried, remarkably subdued. It's almost like they kind of almost shrugged their shoulders and went, "Oh, that was terrible, but oh well, let's move on."
Oops, that was awful.
Yeah.
Sorry we failed. Epic fail by the Secret Service. They have one job, and that is to protect president or former president. And I don't get it. They're better than that. They are always and always have been better than that. Will you think this will result in change and better protection, Andrew, any of this hearing, or do you think they're just gonna get rid of the head of the snake and call it good?
Well, actually, if you see some of Trump's latest security team, they definitely don't look like diversity, equity, inclusion hires. And what's even funnier, if you saw Cheadle walk on a Capitol Hill, once again, you see the people that she was surrounded by. They did not look like DEI hires at all. Now, the skeptic in me would say that no. DEI in Washington is here to stay, and there's unlikely to be any changes. But at the same time, the optimist would say to me that look at ESG. Those three letters have turned into absolute poison. For those who don't know, ESG is sustainable investing. It stands for environmental, social, and governance. It's a woke form of investing. Anyway, as biggest proponents like BlackRock, they're moving away from those letters. So like ESG, DEI is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's for all the people who want to appear progressive in Washington or in Wall Street. But as long as there's demand for it, there's always going to be a supply. So on one hand, DEI, it should die like ESG, but it will not, unfortunately.
Oh shoot! How's the press been reporting on both the incident and the hearing this week, Dave?
Well, I think that the initial reporting was an attempt to minimize the assassination attempt, calling it an incident, loud noise, which I think all of us could agree with. But once they got their journalistic sea legs and they started in with the disinformation and conspiracy theories, I think that they got on a roll. And those theories actually range from every lunatic notion that you can think of. Trump wasn't really shot. I think that the blood belied that notion, but or he staged the shooting himself in hopes that the shot would be really accurate and only take out his ear.
Well, a 20-year-old kid on a hot roof.
Right.
And he apparently has ninja skills. He had ninja skills because the Secret Service couldn't pull it off.
Well, and then it was Trump's fault because of his hateful rhetoric that prompted the assassination. But I think that over time, some more adult reporting has appeared and is more factual. But what the media is trying to do now is simply admit that happened and okay, it was really bad. But let's try to minimize the positive political effects that might result, in Trump looking a whole lot better. And I think that's where they're at right now. And, this generally takes actually the form of them not reporting any further aspects of the July 13th event and or the assassination attempt.
Mhm.
And I think, though, the media is going to have a pretty tough job, and because whether they want to report on the specifics of the assassination attempt or not, they're going to have to deal with the oversight committees, both the Senate and House, who are hot on grilling former Secret Service members, the state police, as we saw. And the problem they have is that both the Democrats and the Republicans are equally keen on coming to some understanding of what exactly happened. And I think that I didn't want to let Andrew's point slip by without mentioning the fact that the McKinsey report that originally gave rise to all of the diversity, equity, and inclusion
Right.
benefits has been proven to be a scam. They couldn't duplicate it, and McKinsey has egg on their face. I mean, if you can have a corporation that could have egg on its face, it does.
But McKinsey's the same one that told New York for, I think, was a $3 million that if you have a garbage can, you can put garbage in there and clean the streets. So I think the McKinsey is a genius.
Genius. John, here's what I noticed right after the assassination attempt. Trump was on stage a couple days later. He was at the convention. He was working the room. He was talking to people. He gave a great speech.
So tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States. Thank you.
And then he showed up in Michigan for a rally a couple days later, and he was back. I mean, boom, he is doing his bombastic Trump and name calling and pointing fingers. And Joe Biden, before he actually stepped away, went to Delaware and hid. And people haven't seen him or, talked to him for a while. And then all this transpired. So going forward, how do you think the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are going to run their elections from this point forward? Has this made a difference, or is it back to business as usual?
Oh, easy peasy question. By
really?
the way, Dave,
I'm gonna work harder then.
the Supreme Court did rule in Citizens United that corporations can get egg on their face. Just so for the so there are a few complexities here that I think are very interesting. We've been watching the Democratic Party implode for a while. This is a party that has shown remarkable discipline and lockstep, sometimes over the most extreme of issues. If there's one thing they have is party loyalty, and it's fragmenting. And it was fragmenting before the debate. It started fragmenting more after the debate. It's continued to fragment. And I think we're going to see more of that. Meanwhile, the Republicans are actually enthused in rebuilding, not in hating their enemies, but in building up hope for their nation. It's an exuberant kind of conservative form of change you can believe in. Though I think people really believe in it more. They're desperate to get away from this identity politics, the DEI, that the Democrats are going to keep pumping. I saw a big debate on social media this morning about Kamala Harris, with Democrats saying that they're so tired of the sexism against her. Can we just move past what her gender is and what her accomplishments aren't, and her rosy spirituality about the future she's going to create by ignoring the past? But you asked Dave something, and I thought it was very interesting. So, by the way, direct answer to your question, this has had two immediate impacts on the Trump campaign. One is huge support and enthusiasm, just from a messaging perspective, just from a patriotic perspective. They couldn't have asked for a better campaign rally than shooting him through the ear. Kind of like when they convicted him of a number of crimes they can't even define. It rebounded against them. And so what are their next steps? And so now this cage is being rattled because they keep using all of these lies as their narrative. They keep collapsing. And when you ask Dave about what the media is saying, they created a vacuum. part of the indictment. I mean, it was a piranha fest on Cheadle. I was amazed.
You know what it is, though. No, you're just not going to tell us, right?
I was excited. I am so sick of administrative lack of accountability. This is what Project 2025 is about. This is an example. Was she told you're going to fall on your sword and be the scapegoat while you cover for the rest of us? Meanwhile, there was no official messaging. Dave hit on this. There was no explanation to the American people what happened by mainstream media or the authorities who were supposed to be in charge. They had nothing. Crickets. This colossal lockstep coordination between mainstream media and the Biden administration that we witnessed during COVID with Fauci, et cetera, and maybe more than one administration, it just suddenly evaporated. And now the country's been rampant with conspiracy theories about, second shooters and SS complicity, Secret Service complicity. And this is who's in charge of the misinformation, who's in charge of the messaging. So they're losing their messaging. And so right after all this happened, here's NBC Philadelphia. I just think sometimes that 1,000 words speak better than 1,000 pictures. Quote, Republicans appear to be seeing a wave of renewed enthusiasm from their base of voters following the failed attempt to assassinate former President Donald Trump last weekend. It's a sharp reversal of course for a contest that was shaping up to be a largely predictable rematch of the 2020 election. Where were you? What kind of gaslighting effort is this to, once again, at some point, and this is back to Thomas Frank, you cannot make your entire message about hating Donald Trump. At some point, you have to bring actual issues to the voters rather than infinite ad hominem attacks against J.D. Vance and everything Republican and domestic terrorists. It's all collapsing now. And I think that they're becoming empty words, and the voters are just going to be blocking them out. They're not going to listen anymore. They're not getting any truth, if anything at all. Talk about misinformation. So I think this is a major crisis. And though then in the wake of this, by the way, Biden steps down and Kamala steps up, and they're just gushing about how she raised $47 million in a day. Well, he raised a lot more than that by getting convicted as a felon. I mean,
well, anyway, she didn't raise that money anyway. That money was sitting there, and it was earmarked for Joe Biden, and the people who had that money said, "No, I'm not giving it to Joe Biden because he needs to go." And then as soon as he went, then they went, okay, now you can have our money. Yeah. I mean, Kamala Harris hasn't actually raised a penny so far.
They're trying to raise it, they're trying to create another false narrative is what I'm saying. And even their false narrative doesn't stack up. That's all I'm saying. They're imploding on every front.
I think when John mentioned conspiracy,
I wonder if they're reconsidering Hillary. Hillary, here's a sad thing. This is a sad thing. I'm pro women everywhere to succeed and break the glass, as they say, but if I had to choose, I'd pick Hillary Clinton over Kamala Harris any day of the week.
Don't we have any Canadian women that can run? We have any American women of competence? Sarah, I nominate you. I know Andrew will second the nomination. Andrew?
No, I'm all for Graham.
Yeah, no. I like my position in politics just the way it is.
I like Grahamonomics. That's my favorite.
Grahamonomics.
The problem is I'm not a natural born citizen. I am an
Gary
unnatural
Day for president. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap this one up. And hey, let's hope Congress gets to the bottom of all of this and gives we the people some answers. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel, where you can see all of our TV productions. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for Free Thinking, Free Speech, LibertyNation.com.